our Prime Minister must be feeling the hand of history on his shoulder today. He's the first British Prime Minister to go to Paris to commemorate Armistice Day since Churchill went there with de Gaulle just after Paris had been liberated from the Nazis in 1944.
I mean, it's an amazing gap, that, because, of course, we celebrate Remembrance Sunday, which is the nearest Sunday to Armistice Day, the 11th of November, this year is today, but we don't really celebrate Armistice Day. Yes, there'll be a 2-minute silence, but the big event is on the Sunday. So I'm surprised previous Prime Ministers haven't gone. But, of course, you can see the symbolism when Donald Trump has arrived in the White House, and the anti-European may be about to abandon and gift-wrap Ukraine for Vladimir Putin. So we're not in the EU, but they are our neighbours. And
Trump has actually called Putin. There are reports this morning that 2 days in, he called him. And what insiders in Washington are saying is that actually he talked quite tough to Putin. He reminded him of the American presence in Europe and basically said, don't cross any more red lines. Well,
he said, don't escalate the war. But at the same time, he has about 20% of Ukrainian territory. And as Trump would boast on the campaign trail, he's going to end this war in a day. How will you end that war in a day? You say, well, to Ukraine, we're not going to supply any more weapons. That's it. And they won't be able to push the Russians out.
No, and that would mean a surrender, effectively, for Ukraine. And you think, how many people have died in that war? And even if they do a deal where Putin gives back some of the territory, there won't be all of it. So it will be a victory for Putin. But we don't know yet what Trump's going to do.
But the casualty figures on the Russian side that were released yesterday... 1,500 dead or injured every day in October.
Putin doesn't care.
Even Russia can't sustain figures like that.
Putin doesn't care because they've got millions of young men that will just be conscripted into their war. It's a shocking figure.
What are the Ukrainian figures, though? Now, they're kind of a closely guarded secret. Ukraine is a much smaller country. Population must be a quarter, a fifth of that of Russia. The Ukrainians must be losing so many of their people being killed and injured too, but we don't see that. And so if it's the meat grinder Putin is operating, throwing people in, he can win because he's got more people he can lose.
And he doesn't care. He doesn't care about public opinion.
Yesterday we saw the cost of war, didn't we? At the Remembrance Sunday commemoration at the Cenotaph, and all of these wonderful veterans. And I would say none of them see themselves as heroes, because we've been hearing from them this morning. They talk about those who don't come home, the lives lost. And, you know, one of the veterans who I was so moved by yesterday was the 100-year-old Richard Brock, who is a veteran from D-Day, and there were only a handful left. It was a very, very moving event yesterday. And also we saw members of the royal family, but we didn't see Camilla, of course, the Queen, still suffering with a chest infection. But the Princess of Wales was there on the balcony. First official appearance, or one of the first, since her recent cancer treatment, looking down, of course, and her husband was one of those laying a wreath. And meanwhile, a record number of former Prime Ministers. Could you name them all?
I think I can, because Major...
Yes.
Blair, then it's Brown, Cameron, Theresa May,
You're doing well.
Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak.
There we go.
They were amazing.
Well said.
All joined Sir Keir Starmer in his first ceremony, of course, as Prime Minister, and Kemi Badenoch.
She was...
Leader of the opposition.
Liz Truss was only in Downing Street 49 years. If she goes...
49 days.
49 days. If she goes to every Remembrance Sunday, if she lives in 95, she'll have been at more Remembrance Sundays than she spent in Downing Street. I mean, it is... It is looking... It's looking a bit silly. So many of them.
But I think if they don't go, then they're criticised.
You couldn't possibly leave her out. I mean, she was a Prime Minister, like it or not.
Or Boris Johnson, not. But you're right. But it is looking...
Nigel Farage says that he was blocked from laying a wreath, blocked by the establishment.
Well, he's a party leader, and small parties... I mean, Ed Davey was there. All right, they've got more MPs, but...
You've got to have 6 MPs, apparently, to lay a wreath, and he's only got 5.
But he got more votes than the Lib Dem leader, and the Lib Dem leader...
You think they could have stretched a point,
yes,
don't you,
I
really?
do.
No, I think you can't make an exception for one person. You could change the rules. I wouldn't be against that. You'd extend the period of the ceremony. But look, he shouldn't be whinging, because it's about the veterans. And it is the heroism, and it's the everyday matter-of-fact way about they talk about doing extraordinary things. We've got to treasure that Second World War generation because they're dying out. We've lost in our lifetimes the First World War generation, and when he's talking about, he was talking. The guy was talking about those who are left behind. It's in the famous poem, those who didn't get to grow old, so that we could.
Well, look, in a couple of minutes, stay watching, because we're going to be showing you some extraordinary footage which has emerged in the last few hours of Donald Trump on a plane talking about the royal family. Hang on for that, because leading into it, I guess one of the big items on the agenda in Paris today is going to be the pressure, clearly, that Trump is going to exert on Europe to start spending more on defence. When are we going to do it? We didn't get any commitment from the government in interviews yesterday. They won't say when they're going to push it up to 2.5 or higher. It's an open-ended commitment. It's something that the governments are going to have to address, because if they don't, Trump is simply going to pull the plug, isn't he?
And David Lammy last week, the Foreign Secretary, agreed with Trump's assertion that Europe's not doing enough on defence spending. So then you get Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, who holds the purse strings, yesterday refusing to say that because Labour is committed to spending 2.5% of GDP on defence, but it hasn't said when. And he wouldn't commit yesterday.
Britain's one of the world. I think we were the 6th or 7th biggest spender in cash terms in the world. The NATO membership fee is 2% of your GDP. The majority of countries pay that now. Not all. Those who don't should. But we pay 2.35. We're already over it. We've got to get a better bang for our buck, not just keep paying more money. The reason the US spends more than 4% is because they face across the Atlantic and the Pacific. We don't. So they go two ways. They spend more, and they also want to be the world's premier superpower, be challenged by the emergence of China, maybe others down the line. But look, we spend. Yeah, but we do spend. It's a myth that we don't spend.
But yes, but going to 2.5 may turn out to be a lost leader in our case, because if Trump does pull the plug, and if America says, actually, we're not picking up the tab anymore for you NATO countries, it's time that you paid your way, we'll end up paying a lot more. But I was just thinking about the relationship that this country has with Trump, and we've obviously lots of coverage in the last few days about the Labour government when they were in opposition, all the insults they basically poured onto Trump's head. At least we have his love for the royal family to count on. And just look at this clip. This is from a documentary that was made behind the scenes of the campaign.
By Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, and this is Trump on his jet, presumably Air Force. No, it wouldn't be Air Force One. On his private jet, talking about the royal family and looking at a family album picture. He loves it, doesn't he?
But
that's Scottish mother, isn't it?
Yeah.
He rather prefers. He likes to emphasise the Scottish side on the German side.
But he's not the only American who loves the royal family. I mean, they're held in great affection.
I can remember there was
those were British or Anglo-Saxon. You know, I think in the Latino community, I don't think they're as enthusiastic about the royal family.
Well,
it's about 20% of the population.
I think that shows why it's such an important part of soft power for this country, the monarchy. It really is.
Well, Charles...
And I remember seeing Angela Merkel with the German Chancellor nearly fawning over the Queen when she saw her. She has that impact, and the King has it too.
Yeah, well...
Kevin, I think that we found out last week it is dangerous to assume what any particular community in America thinks about anything, considering the results.
Well, she's still... Yeah, but if you're going to go down that line, she's still won in black people, she's still won in Latinos, she just didn't win big enough.
Yeah, it's over.
But
Trump won.
Yeah, well, he did.
Yeah.
He did.
And deservedly so.
But you know what happened, though, and why he won, is because his vote went up 1 million on 4 years ago, but hers was 10 million down on Joe Biden. She lost as much as he won. Now, he's won fair and square.
His vote went up in 49 out of the 50 states.
He would not have accepted the result if it was reversed, and she had come out on top. But I think King Charles, is going to have to turn Buckingham Palace into an Airbnb for Trump. The government.
Well, it looks like he might have to be the ambassador.
Because going to say the same thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because Trump listens to what the King says. He loves the royal family. There is this, suggestion that it should be Nigel Farage because he's got such a good relationship with Donald Trump and he's offered his services, hasn't he? I mean, I think Darren Jones poured water on that yesterday.
I bet he did.
I'm not sure that the Labour government would want a Reform UK ambassador. But it is our debate this morning. Andrew, do you think that the Labour government should leverage that relationship that they have?
Absolutely.
Because we face these taxes being put on our exports over to the States, which could really damage British business.
And remember, Trump said in September, tariffs are the best thing that were ever invented.
His favourite word, he said.
Favourite word, favourite word. So that could be a big issue.
Charles and Trump could not be further apart on the environment. An issue as close to the heart of Charles as you can get. So he may put up with him. He may have him round. He may have to do all that flattery, roll out the red carpet.
We can play.
Yeah,
You've got to admit it. It's a
well, if you take the job as monarch, you've sometimes got to be deployed and
Speaking
do what
of the
wants.
royals, if you were Prince Harry, I wonder how worried you'd be about the result of this election, because we know that Trump is actually privately furious with Harry. One, for what he wrote in Spare, his autobiography. Two, for the interview that he and Meghan gave to Oprah Winfrey. He regards what he said about the royal family, and in particular his favourite royal, the Queen, Harry's grandmother, as a real betrayal. He's sort of on record as saying that. And we know that Harry has got issues with his visa in America, his visa application. We don't know if he lied on it or not, but he admitted in Spare to doing drugs, basically.
Yeah, he did.
And if you apply for a visa application, you've got to admit drug use. And the speculation is that he didn't admit it. And Trump he's on record as warning that if he was in charge, Harry wouldn't stay in America.
He told the Express, I wouldn't protect him. He betrayed the Queen. That's unforgivable. He would be on his own if it was down to me.
Yeah, and maybe this is why they've bought a house in Portugal. It's a thought.
They have bought a house in Portugal.
They've bought a house in Portugal, Harry and Meghan.
But we don't know...
Does he need a boat hole?
We don't know which visa he's on. He might be in there on one of these special diplomatic visas where you bypass all the
but lying on a visa application is a big deal.
But I think the questions are rather different then. It's rather like if we go to this state, you fill in an ESTA. And it says, have you ever tried to overthrow a government? Well, yeah, just about every election. And almost every election I've failed, but nevertheless...
Have you lied, then, on your ESTA application each time you go to the States?
No, in case the embassy's watching, no.
You've just said live on television.
But it would be... No, we all try to overthrow governments, don't we? But we do it peacefully in the democratic process. But, of course, it would be absolutely wrong and tyrannical if Trump... misused his position as US president to target... they're not very popular in the UK now, but in order to target two individuals.
Look, if he's behind the insurrection on Capitol Hill on January the 6th, 4 years ago, I don't think he'll find kicking Harry out too big a deal.
Exactly.
But it would be hugely embarrassing.
It would. And, of course, Meghan has been very hostile about... Trump too, hasn't she, in the past?
She's refused to go to ceremonies where Trump was president.
Well, that's it, isn't it? That is it. And
he takes these things very personally.
He's thin-skinned.
But he can also, given that J.D. Vance, his vice-president, once described him as America's Hitler and didn't vote for him in 2016 when he won, he can also, as long as people do a bit of bowing and scraping, he quite likes the repentant sinner.
Yeah.
But he's such a powerful figure now because he's got... I mean, a massive, huge mandate now, and he doesn't have to worry about getting re-elected. He can effectively do what he wants.
Unless he changes the constitution.
Well, no, he's not
becomes president for life.
And he gets control of both houses. He can do what he wants. Maybe he might even do something on gun control. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
No, he'll have more guns.
No point. Can we bring it back home? It looks as if, under the guidance of Jeremy Clarkson, British farmers are going to make a sort of a French protest. You know what the French farmers are like with these tax rises, which they say mean that they're going to have to sell their farms when the present owner dies, can't pass it on to the family because of inheritance tax, and they're threatening to blockade the ports. They said they wanted to come into London with the tractors, but they were stopped from doing it. And Clarkson's saying, rally round me, we're going to win this one.
Yeah, and you make an enemy of Jeremy Clarkson at your peril. Very popular. That TV show, Clarkson, so hugely popular. And it does show to a lot of people how difficult it is to make money out of farming.
Jeremy Clarkson is defending his own tax dodge. When he bought his farm for $4.5 million, he said it was critical that he could avoid tax on it, on inheritance tax.
He admitted that, yeah.
You can sell a farm you can pass it on £3 million and not pay any tax, and then after that, on each other pound, you pay 20%, not 40%. You pay half rate in inheritance tax. That's it. It's not about family farms. This is about big landowners, including your proprietor, your editor-in-chief, including Dyson, James Dyson. They all got lots of land because they thought they'd avoid tax. Now they're going to have to pay their fair share.
I'm not sure all of those joining this rally are these huge landowners. I've got a feeling they run, you know, farms which cost a lot of money to run, and they don't want to sell off the farm when the present owner dies.
There's been a huge emotional spasm, and people haven't understood what is coming.
No, you haven't understood it, Kevin.
It's likely to be fewer than 100 inherited family farms a year.
That is figures coming out of the Treasury.
Paul Dacre will have to pay it. Viscount Rothermere will have to pay it.
Listen to him. Nobody believes the figures coming out of the Treasury anymore because they lied all the way through their manifesto. They've lied about tax cuts, they've lied about national insurance, and they're lying about farmers. This is going to hurt small family farms that have had farms for generations.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. And this lot don't get it because they think all farmers are rich.
No, it's
Therefore,
not.
If they're rich, they're bad.
No.
Rich is bad under this lot.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. This is a huge mistake, and the farmers are going to have public opinion on their side. You wait and see. You wait and see.
Because you're totally misrepresenting the position.
No, you are.
And you know what it's about.
You're taking the government's line.
Well,
you had a text from the Prime Minister.
There's going to be 1,800 farmers at a separate event, and there's going to be, I mean, who knows how many, at this very big rally on November the 19th. I mean, you know, it isn't a small number of people, Kevin.
Kevin says it's 100. There's 1,800.
It's because a lot of people think they're going to be hit when they're not. That always happens with inheritance tax. For instance, inheritance tax, I think the figure given was 6% of estates. If you're lucky enough to pay inheritance tax, you're doing very well. You're getting a lot of something for nothing.
You quoted a figure of 3 million there. You know, I was reading yesterday that a typical dairy farm has about 600 cattle, head of cattle on it, and that's worth about 1.5 million. And you look at land prices in the UK, which have been rocketing over the last 10, 15 years. I mean, 3 million is actually quite a small farm.
Richard, you know one of the reasons it's been rocketing is because loaded people have been buying up land to avoid tax. That's why it's been rocketing.
OK, a rather divisive issue there. Let's talk then about GP appointments.
That's going well isn't it?
I wonder if you're going to be upset about this one. More than 2 million GP appointments at risk because of Rachel Reeves's national insurance raids. The NHS is exempt from employers' national insurance tax rise, but GPs are run as small businesses, so they will be liable for paying the employer's national insurance.
And care homes.
And I think this is Lib Dem research, which has projected that there will be millions of appointments cut as a result of staff
because
cuts.
They've got to pay the extra national insurance, the doctor's surgery. Could be they have to lay off staff. And so... Is
it the law of unintended consequences here? The whole point about these tax rises is we're supposed to be saving the NHS. If they actually cause fewer appointments to be available, that's not going to look like a benefit for the NHS, is it?
It might have even been on this programme, Wes Streeton, the Health Secretary, said they will deal with it in renegotiating the NHS contracts with GPs, because you're right, they're small businesses. There are some companies operating... too.
So they're going to raise tax from these GPs' businesses to pay back the GPs in a new contract.
That is why I think the Office of Budget Responsibility said the 25 billion rise will really be about, I think it was 15 or 16, I can't remember the exact figure.
They didn't think it through, did they?
No, I think they did. And they knew you would have to spend some of it back.
Well, it makes no sense.
Doesn't seem
to make no sense. And this kicks in April. It kicks in April, and they're supposedly giving us all these extra appointments, and there'll be fewer. Because they've got to... Where's this money? How can a GP surgery raise this extra money?
No.
Coming briefly back to the Express front page today, the government's ignoring protests from pensioners about the winter fuel cuts allowance. Is that a bit of a sleeping giant that is going to reawaken quite soon when the weather gets cold?
It's never gone away, has it?
No,
it's never gone away.
Shadow.
I mean, I think that was they've made a lot of mistakes, this lot, but that was the first and the biggest, in my view.